Hey fellow explorers, so we're fresh back from a trip from Banff National Park in Canada, and earlier this year we did a trip to the Grand Canyon, and going to Banff just left us spending a lot of time saying, wow, this is similar, this is different, and so in this video I thought I would spend some time comparing the two. If you're unfamiliar with the two, Banff National Park is Canada's number one national park. Number one in a couple of ways. It is number one in the sense that it was the first national park that was created in Canada in the late 1800s when they discovered hot springs in the region. But Banff is most famous for its blue-green lakes right here that are colored that way because of the melting glaciers, and the water that melts from the glaciers turns these lakes these really awesome blue-green colors. So now I realize everybody in Canada is like, Banff, of course, it's our number one national park. But, you know, I talk to a lot of people and say, hey, I went to Banff, and they're like, you went to where? But you know what? Just about as many people go to Banff as go to the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is the USA's number 2 most visited national park. What's number 1? It's the Great Smoky Mountains Park, but Grand Canyon number 2. The Grand Canyon was declared a national park in 1908, so about 30 years after Banff right here. You know, the Grand Canyon is considered generally one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. It is definitely known for its gigantic canyon right here, which is really huge. This canyon goes, it's 4,000 feet deep for 277 miles. At its deepest point, it's 6,000 feet deep and 18 miles at its widest. It is an immense canyon, but one of the things that really makes these two parks different in their geography and things like that is that the Grand Canyon, the canyon was caused by the erosion from the river, and in Banff, the geography in Banff was caused by glaciation. That's your word from the day. Glaciation. What is glaciation? Glaciation is the movement of glaciers. So big ice blocks moving around, then sheared off these cliffs. Point Traveler says, are the lake's colors as noticeable in person as they are in the pictures? This particular lake is called Emerald Lake, and the answer is yes. I did not do any touching up or anything to this picture. That's exactly how it looks. It looks exactly emerald color like that, and Janelle agrees and says yes, for sure. I mean, they're really like, it really is one of those where you may have, before going to Banff, I've seen these pictures of these turquoise lakes, and I'm like, I wonder where they're from. And then I saw a Peter McKinnon video, kind of a famous Canadian YouTuber that does camera reviews and this and that. He went with Maddie Hapoya to Banff, and I was like, wow, those things are beautiful. So we decided to plan a trip. All right, so let's talk about the location of these two parks. I'm gonna compare in like 14 different areas. That general description was number 1, so there's not really like a win in that area, but there might be a win in location. So, of course, only some of these are wins, and some are just comparison to understand the differences. In addition to comparing these two parks, I'm also going to be comparing like the Canadian National Park System to the US National Park System, as I think there are some stark differences related to these parks, related to the country and the philosophy that they're managed by too. Okay, so starting with the Grand Canyon. Where is the Grand Canyon? The Grand Canyon is that red pin right there. It is in the southwest of the United States of America, in particular in the state of Arizona. But the Grand Canyon is really not near nothing. The Grand Canyon is about a 4-hour drive from Phoenix, which is the closest major city, or about 4.5 hours from Las Vegas. So wherever you're flying into, it is a pretty far drive. Now, Banff is located up here to the north, as the crow flies, in the Canadian province of Alberta. So over to the west side here, along the ocean, we've got the Canadian province of British Columbia, and then we've got the Canadian province of Alberta. So Banff is located kind of to the north of Montana in the USA. It is quite near Calgary, though. Calgary is the big city There's two big cities in Alberta. There's Calgary and there's Edmonton to the north, but Calgary has a pretty big airport. That's where we flew into. It is a 90-minute drive from Calgary into Banff. So getting into Banff is so much easier than getting into the Grand Canyon. Wherever you're flying into the Grand Canyon, you're going to have yourself a long drive, but only 90 minutes into Banff, which is nice. Now, if you're like, Chris, what about trains? Can I get into these places by trains? Because it's interesting, actually. Banff was really created and developed by or put on the map by the Canadian Pacific Railway, where the railway actually ran into Banff and used to be able to take the train there. That's how everybody got there, but not really anymore. Well, kind of. There's this train called the Rocky Mountaineer. It's more like a land cruise. It's a private train that goes from Vancouver to Banff. It takes 2 days and costs like at least $3,000. Really quite expensive. And Grand Canyon has a similar private railway. To get into the Grand Canyon, there's a private railway that goes from Williams, Arizona into the Grand Canyon. Also 1 trip a day, but Williams, Arizona isn't really near. Like, you're going to drive there and then you're going to take the train. So it's not like you can take the train from any major destination to either of these places. Both of them are great road trip destinations, but for the short drive, I'm going to give the location win to Banff. Zeke is going to ask me how the weather was at this time, and I'm going to talk about that when I get to number 5. The weather is definitely a big difference. All right, let's talk about the size now. So the size of these two parks, starting with the Grand Canyon. The size of the Grand Canyon is 1,900 square miles big. That's the size of the national park itself, which is about 5,000 square kilometers big. Banff is bigger. Banff is 2,564 square miles, which is 6,642 square kilometers. Now, realistically, most people are not going to be exploring all of the space of these national parks, but I definitely did feel that there was more place to get out and spread around in Banff than I did in Grand Canyon. Like in the Grand Canyon, really a lot of stuff is centralized on the rim, where Banff was easier to like get away from the crowds up on the Icefields Parkway towards Jasper National Park, where things tend to get a little bit more remote. All right, let's talk about the attendance of these two parks, starting with the Grand Canyon right here. The Grand Canyon last year had an attendance of 4.74 million people. So almost 5 million people came to the Grand Canyon. This viewpoint right here is Mather Point. This is the #1 viewing spot in the Grand Canyon. I say it's the #1 viewing spot because it's closest to the main visitor center. This is where all the tour buses come, drop people off, and then they come out and look at the view. And so you can see it's not a place where you get away from the crowd. It is a place much like Times Square where you're in the crowds. Banff. How's that compare in attendance? Banff had less people, but not that much less. Banff had 4.13 million. So Grand Canyon, 4.74 million. Banff, 4.13 million. They're on pretty similar orders. The Grand Canyon's more close to 5. Banff is close to 4. Still a lot of people. This is probably one of Banff's main viewpoints. This is looking out at Lake Louise, one of the most famous of these lakes in Banff, which we'll talk about more as we go through here. Though most of the visitors to Banff tend to come in the 3 months that are summer, so June, July, and August, as those are the only months you're going to be guaranteed to have no snow in Banff. And so I think Banff could absolutely feel more crowded during those months, even though in total it has less visitors. Ferdinand asks if I've done a road trip on the Highway 395 in California. If so, what would I recommend? Ferdinand, thank you for your support. The 395 is kind of the inland highway in California, and I have not done a road trip like all the way up to, I've done a road trip up to like Ridgecrest, California, where you go to Death Valley, but not all the way up to Mammoth and things like that. I've done a Highway 99 road trip, which if you haven't checked that out, you can search for Yellow Productions Central California road trip. Okay, so let's compare these two in weather now, because that's going to be a huge difference, and it ties into the question that Zeke asked, which is, what's the weather like right now? So I'll tell you in general what the weather what the weather is at these places, and then I'll tell you what the weather was like just having left Banff. So first, starting with the Grand Canyon, and this is a picture right here at the Grand Canyon at Ooh-Ah Point, one of the main viewpoints in the Grand Canyon. You gotta like hike down about a mile from the rim to get to Ooh-Ah Point right here. So the Grand Canyon, the elevations at the Grand Canyon really range from the bottom of the canyon floor, which is an elevation of 2,000 feet, to the rim or the top, which is at 8,000 feet. That's about 700 meters to about 2,400 meters. The Grand Canyon experiences a variety of weather conditions along that range. So does Banff from the valley to the top. The summer temperatures at the Grand Canyon, relatively pleasant. Highs in the 80 Fahrenheit or so, or about 30 degrees Celsius. Now, if you're down at the bottom of the canyon, they can be 100 degrees or 40 degrees Celsius. The Grand Canyon does get snow, icy roads, low temperatures tend to be, a little below freezing, but not a lot below freezing. High temperatures in the winter, Fahrenheit, hover around the 40s or about 6 degrees Celsius. The average snowfall at the Grand Canyon is about 4 feet or 1.2 meters. That's at the top. Very little snow makes it down to the canyon bottom. Okay. How does that compare to Banff? This is a picture of Banff from 5 days ago. So in May, Banff is cold. But let's talk about the summer first, when most people go. Most people go in the June, July, August time frame, when Banff has average highs around 22 degrees Celsius, or you figure in the mid-70s Fahrenheit. January is the coldest month with lows of negative 15 Celsius, so somewhere around 0 Fahrenheit. Though it can get as low as negative 30 degrees Celsius in Banff. Ooh, that's chilly. Now, one kind of big difference in Banff is that because it's so north, in the summer the days are very long. So for us, the sun wasn't setting until like 9:45 at night or something like that, and like it raises at like 5 in the morning. So very long days in Banff, which makes pretty good for outdoor exploring. But back on that note of snowfall, snowfall in Banff is about 4 times as much as the Grand Canyon. Banff averages about 15 feet of snow at the bottom of their canyon, where the villages or towns are, or 4.5 meters. It can be twice as much if you get up to the mountaintops. Both places you can really experience all 4 seasons in one day. We started this trip in Calgary, where really warm. I was like shorts and t-shirt weather when we got there. And when we left, it was actually snowing, like snowfall, just this past Saturday. And it was the princess's first time seeing snowfall, so she was opening her mouth up and getting the snow. Kathy says, I couldn't even imagine 30 degrees Celsius. I have a funny story about that, so we'll talk about the hotels that we stayed at in a moment. But at one of the hotels we stayed at, I was chatting, well, not, this is one of them. At every hotel we were at, I was chatting up the servers, where they're from, all that sort of stuff. And one of the guys that was our breakfast server on the last day was originally from the Philippines, and he has been living in Banff for 17 years. But he said his first year he experienced one of those like minus 40 degree winters, and he was like, get me out of this place, I can't take it. And he says there's a lot of people that come to Banff for work from around the world, and like after 2 weeks of really experiencing the winter, they're like, I can't take this place, it's really cold. So yeah, it's really cold. Laura says it's wild. Yeah, the temperature range is wild too. And like all the staff there, kind of like when like the day it was snowing, they're like, oh yeah, you get to experience all of our like ranges here in Banff. Grant asked if we saw any weddings at the Fairmont Lake Louise, which is indeed where this path was that we were staying. No weddings at the Fairmont Lake Louise. Where did we see a wedding? We saw a wedding at Emerald Lake, the lake we were at earlier, but there weren't any at the Fairmont Lake Louise while we were there. Zeke says, hey, what kind of animal did you see, or what is common up there that tourists will get good photos, videos? We saw a lot of mountain deer, elk. These deer that have like really big ears, we saw a ton of them. We saw a lot of squirrels, and we saw one grizzly bear, one brown grizzly bear. Good news, that wasn't like we were hiking, but the bear we saw from the car. But so those are kind of like the primary animals. Mountain sheep too. A lot of wildlife in Banff. And so like if you're in Banff, if you're going off the beaten hiking path where there's a lot of people, they generally encourage you to take bear spray. So I'd see like the avid hikers generally on their backpack right here with a can of bear spray in case some bears got too close. All right. Kid Blue Creation says, how do you pack for those weather extremes? And by the way, what am I drinking today? Chris today is drinking some high mountain oolong tea from Taiwan right here. Layers. So, I mean, I brought shorts, I brought t-shirts, I've got a fleece to go over the t-shirt, I've got a winter jacket to go over that, I got beanies, I got gloves, meaning we took a lot of luggage. It was 5 of us that went on this trip. It was myself, it was OC Girl, it was the Curious Princess, it was OC Girl's brother and OC Girl's mom. It was 5 of us. And then, because we had so much luggage from our house to the airport, we had to take 2 Ubers because we wouldn't just fit in any one of our cars. And when we were there, we rented a Jeep Grand Cherokee, like the same thing as a Dodge Durango, like really big SUV, so we could put all of our luggage in it because we needed things for every weather destination. Okay. I think the weather is better in the Grand Canyon than the weather in Banff. Like 9 months of snow a year makes for a really short visiting season. And for us, Lake Louise was still frozen over. Many trails still had snow on them. A friend of ours was actually hiking near Lake Louise and slipped and dislocated his shoulder. That's how like snowy and icy the trails were still in May. Which is why most people go from mid-June, July, and August, because those are like the only months you're really guaranteed to not have snowy, icy, or slippery conditions. The Grand Canyon, the snowy, icy, or slippery conditions are much more January, February, maybe a little bit of the end of December, but the rest of it, you're having a much easier time to get around. All right, let's talk about the 6th area I want to compare these 2 parks in. I call this section top versus bottom. Chris, what are you talking about? Top versus bottom. Well, we'll start with the Grand Canyon here, which is it's a top park. By that, all of the like visiting infrastructure at the Grand Canyon is on the top of the mountains or the top of the rims. So the visitor centers, the hotels, the restaurants, the parking lots, the ticket gates, all that stuff is high at this 8,000-foot elevation. And you come there and then you look down at the view or you hike down. So it's a top to bottom park. There's no way to get to the bottom other than hiking or riding a mule there. We'll talk about more in a moment. But so because of that, it has all the things I would call of a hike where like I hate reverse hikes. I don't know about y'all. If for those that are avid hikers out there, reverse hikes are ones where you start at the top, you go down, and then you got to work your way up. Because when you go that way, you're like, oh, it's totally fine to go down, until you get down, and then you're like, I want to get back up, and you're like, this is really tiring, especially because it's at a high elevation. At the Grand Canyon, there are all these signs to like warn visitors that going down to the bottom of the canyon and back up in one day is like not advisable at all, because like it seems really easy to get down and then you just can't get up anymore because you get too tired. So I much prefer hikes that go the other way. And so Banff is a bottom to top park. This view that we see right here, this is a view of the town of Banff down there at the bottom, taken from Sulphur Mountain, which is a mountain that the Banff gondola takes you up to. So there's a sightseeing cable car gondola, takes you up to the top of this mountain. You can enjoy the view, but all of the tourist infrastructure, hotels, restaurants, those sorts of things is at the bottom. Clearly there was a cable car that took you up here, and there's 4 gondola lifts in Banff that, you know, when you take it up there, then there's restaurants and a shop and things like that at the top of the gondola, but there's not hotels or that sort of stuff up there. So most of the hikes in Banff are hikes that are from the bottom to the top. So when you get tired going up, then you walk down, and it's a lot easier to get down than at the Grand Canyon. So I like that better. Cottage Full of Love agrees with me that reverse hikes are a drag. Indeed, they are. Points Traveler asks, for our car, did we use the four-wheel drive? We never engaged the four-wheel drive because while there was snow, and there was snow on the trails and all of those things, the roads were generally pretty well plowed. And even on the day that it was snowing, it wasn't accumulating on the road in May. Okay. Let's talk about the price of these two parks, because there's a big difference here in the price. At the Grand Canyon, it is $20 per adult, one person, if you were to like walk in or ride your bike in somehow. It is $35 per car. And either one, whether you just kind of somehow walked on in or you drove in, those tickets are valid for 7 days. So for $20 for one person or $35 for everybody in your car, you get a 7-day ticket. And if you want to buy an annual pass right here to all U.S. national parks, it's $80 U.S. Banff, on the other hand, for one adult is $11. Not for 7 days, but $11 Canadian, which is maybe $8 US per 1 day. So if you're just going for 1 day, it's cheaper, but it adds up because it's only for 1 day. So if you want 7 days, it's considerably more, or it's $22 per car or group, Canadian dollars. Or if you buy an annual pass, it is 151 Canadian dollars, which is 60-70% more than the U.S. National Park Pass. So significantly more to go into the Canadian national parks. At the Grand Canyon, you pay at the gate or you don't get in. Like these entry gates they've got, like you don't get in, like you have to stop at the gate. All the roads go through the gate. You have to pay or you don't get into the park. At Banff, entry is on the honor system. So as you drive in, like the main entrance to Banff from Calgary, the highway has like lanes over here, like if you want to buy a ticket and there's ticket booths, or it has lanes over here, like if you already have a ticket, just like drive on through. And I found that to really be quite novel, to be like, oh, well, we trust you to buy a ticket, and if you do, get in line or buy it at the visitor center or something. And if you've already got one, just go this way. It's actually kind of nice that at Banff, you can buy your tickets ahead of time. You can buy them online. You can have them mailed to you, so you don't have to wait in those lines. In our case, we bought this annual pass at the visitor center in Canmore. We bought the annual pass because we were going to be there for 7 days, and so it was like cheaper to buy the annual pass than it was to buy the individual day tickets. The way they enforce that you have a pass in Banff isn't by whether you can get in or not. It's like ticketing at the parking lots. So you have to display your annual pass or your daily pass when you park. Otherwise, they issue a ticket. Laura asks if Canada has reciprocity with the USA or vice versa. The answer is no. Your U.S. national pass won't get you into Canadian parks, and your Canadian pass won't get you into U.S. parks. And Cottage Full of Love says the trustworthy Canadians. I love that. Shauna says if I mentioned the gondola, I did, but I'll get back to the gondola again, too. Masood says, Chris, you know what happened to my latest trip to Vegas? Our rental car broke in and stole all bags that from the Halal Guys parking lot. That's awful, Masood. I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's a bummer. That's kind of like really a way to ruin your trip. So sorry about that. Brooklyn Joe says, do you know if they charge for handicap in Banff? I do not know, Brooklyn Joe. Okay, so, all right, so who wins on this one? Well, the U.S. national parks are going to win because they are cheaper. All right, let's talk about the village town vibe, because both the Grand Canyon and Banff are national parks that also have people that live in them. So at the Grand Canyon, there are about 2,000 people that live in the Grand Canyon Village. It is really a tourist town. I mean, both of these towns were created for tourism. Let's make no mistake about this. These were not these towns exist because like they provide services for tourists, people who work in the park, that sort of stuff. But in the Grand Canyon, it's like really a tourist town. There's like one grocery store, and it's got like extortion prices. That's the grocery store. It's like the one of those where like if you were in any other town, you would pass up this place and just keep on going. But in the Grand Canyon, you don't have any other choices other than this place, and so you shop there. There's a small village around the El Tovar Hotel, which is like the main hotel in the Grand Canyon. There's like few hotels, there's some shops, there's some gift shops, but it doesn't really have like a neighborhood vibe. It's like these are things for people visiting the Grand Canyon, but not really things that you would see in other places. I mean, there is a post office and those sorts of things, but Banff, on the other hand, is like actually an actual town. There are 10,000 people that live in the town of Banff inside Banff National Park, also created to service tourism, but because there are so many people that live in Banff, there's actually like numerous grocery stores with reasonable grocery store prices. It's a nice place to actually stroll in downtown Banff. They've even got parking garages in downtown Banff. They have gift shops just like the Grand Canyon does, but they've also got like real shops like Lululemon or like Smartwool. And so the actual like vibe of downtown Banff is cooler. What's really neat, if you haven't seen my walking tour that I just published a day and a half ago, you can go watch it after this video. But what's cool about downtown Banff, and again, this being like a top to bottom park, is that pretty much every direction you look from downtown Banff are these huge mountains. So like you look in this picture, here's the, one of the main streets in downtown Banff with these huge snow-peaked mountains on the other side. And like any street you would look, there's something like that at the end of it. And so the vibe of the town, to me, is just really cool. The one downfall that also makes Banff more expensive is that if you want to park in downtown Banff, you have to pay more. So your annual pass to the park doesn't pay for your parking in downtown Banff, and it's expensive. Like 3 hours was like $18 Canadian, like really expensive. There is free parking at the train station in downtown Banff, but if you want to park close in, then you're going to pay quite a bit more. Grand Canyon National Park, there is no extra fees for parking anywhere. It just gets full, and good luck once it's full. Yeah, this is like Alex says related to the extortion things. It's like getting gas in Death Valley, the big national park in between California and Las Vegas, which is pay $8 a gallon. Indeed, extortion prices. Zeke says, what area has the most attractive night lights? If you mean like what area has the best dark sky, like to see the stars, I would say the better place to see the stars is the Grand Canyon, because the less clouds at the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is more sunny, where Banff is, because the weather is snow and rain and all that stuff, like you'll see clouds most of the time. But if you're looking for nightlife, like you want a evening nightcap or bar or live music or things like that, you'll find that in Banff. You will find none of that at the Grand Canyon. Like there ain't nothing to do with the Grand Canyon once the sun goes down. It's pitch black and you just want to get back to your hotel or your campsite or wherever you're staying, because you don't really want to be walking around the Grand Canyon in the dark. Art asks if Canada's expensive these days. Has inflation hit there too? As someone from the USA, like the Canadian dollar is like $1.25 Canadian to about $1 US. So I didn't notice things to be any more expensive than they are in the US. Janelle asked if we got to see the Northern Lights. No, we heard everybody was in Canada was able to see the Northern Lights while we were there, but we would look up in the middle of the night to try to see the Northern Lights, and no dice. Okay. But Shauna says, I'd agree with that. Living in Calgary, it's expensive these days, plus our weather with winter 9 months long. You need to be okay with cooler weather. Yes. Art says, the town looked like it lacked character. Is this true? I don't know. It depends what you mean by character. I think the Banff town has much more character than the Grand Canyon town. That being said, it does not have as much character as perhaps a Swiss or German village in the Alps. So, like, there's definitely more character in those places. Banff is much more, like, created character. Like, they've definitely whether they enforce some architectural codes or they just think people come to visit these places better if they make them look mountainy. It's not at the same level as a Swiss chalet or a German castle or those sorts of things. But for many tourist towns, I thought it had more character and more charm than many other tourist towns that I've visited. Okay, let's go to hotels for a moment, but Masood asked this question of whether I've faced thefts. How do I prepare for a trip to avoid? I will answer this in two ways. Yes, so that I have faced thefts. The beginning of the Panda crew back here was Usigro and I, we were in London. We were eating at a street side restaurant in London. We were sitting at a table outside this restaurant. I put my camera bag just to my leg at my left, and someone stole my camera bag while we were sitting there having dinner. Real drag. Hated it. Awful. Especially as a vlogger, because now I don't have a camera to record my videos, and they stole all the videos that I had recorded for the past few days. Super drag. Yes, and so Art backs that up and says, the worst part about that was that Topher, the original traveling panda, was in that bag. And after Topher got stolen, many people on live stream right now, in fact, sent these pandas that are back here, which started the Yellow Productions crew. When we take rental cars, so like on this trip to Banff, we've got a rental car full of luggage. We don't really stop anywhere when our car is full of luggage. So the way we design the trip is like, okay, we got into Calgary. So this is like, how do we avoid theft? We get into Calgary at 10 p.m. at night. We pick up a rental car. We drive to the Residence Inn in downtown Calgary. And then we had a conversation about like, oh, well, how much time do we want to spend in Calgary? Do we just want to spend a few hours there and then drive on? But if we want to spend the day in Calgary, then we have to check out of our hotel. What do we do with our luggage? And so we decided to spend 2 nights in Calgary. That way we can have our luggage at our hotel. And then when we're ready to check out on the second day, we check out, we take our bags, we put them in our car, and then we drive from the Residence Inn in Calgary to our next hotel in Canmore. At our hotel in Canmore, it's now noon. It's not time to check in. But we go to the hotel, we take our bags out, we ask the hotel staff to hold our bags, and then we go to lunch. And then we get to check in later, rinse and repeat this cycle. So at no time are we parking anywhere with all of our stuff in our car. We're basically like, anytime our stuff is in our car, we're just like transiting from one hotel to another. We'll get to the next hotel, and if we can't check in, we'll have the hotel hold our bags. That way our car is empty of stuff. So that's how we avoid the theft of our stuff, because it is a drag. And Art says, yes, you were visibly shaken. Yes, it was not the best time of Chris's life. All right. So Mai points out that Banff has significantly better air quality compared to the Grand Canyon. I would agree with that too, Mai. So that's a +1 for Banff. Okay, so let's talk about the hotels in these two places. So Banff has 52 hotels listed on the Banff Tourism website, including truly amazing hotels like this one right here. This is the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel, often known as the Castle in the Rockies. We stayed at the Fairmont Banff right here. We also stayed at the Fairmont Lake Louise. These are probably the 2 most iconic hotels in Banff, and really is the reason why we went to Banff. 7 months ago, we were in Whistler in Canada, and we were staying at the Fairmont in Whistler. And we loved the Fairmont in Whistler, and we browsed the hotel magazine or watched the Fairmont promotional videos on the TV or something like that, and we saw these 2 other Fairmonts in this national park. And we're like, oh my gosh, it's a national park that actually has good hotels. Because I told you I was just in the Grand Canyon, right? Yeah, we'll get to those hotels in a moment, but they're not very good. And so then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a great national park with amazing hotels. Oh, see girl, let's go. And so we planned our trip around these 2. Like we stayed in more than just those 2 hotels, but like staying at those 2 hotels was central to our trip. Now, because there's so many hotels, the hotels aren't really like controlled, run by, contracted by Canadian national parks. They're like commercialized. Like, here's your land, run your hotel. And so because of that, they're they're expensive. They're priced expensive. The Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel in May was, actually both hotels, both the Fairmont there and here were about $600 US per night. Everything included, taxes, all that stuff, parking, roll that in, about $600 a night in May. You go in July, it's about double that. The other thing that Banff has that the Grand Canyon doesn't have is a lot of swimming pools. Banff started as a hot spring getaway. That's why this hotel is called the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel, because it originally had hot spring water. Hot spring water is not there at this hotel anymore, but lots of hotels have swimming pools. If you like swimming pools, Banff. If you like swimming pools, not Grand Canyon, because Grand Canyon doesn't seem to have any swimming pools. Yeah, Art says $600 extortion prices. Yes, I guess if we talk about whether inflation has hit there, certainly has for these hotels. And Wonton Destruction says, sounds like the Chateau in Quebec is next. I think that is another iconic Fairmont, right? So yes, that is possibly next. We're looking at, we're definitely looking at, like, we've been enjoying Canada. So we're kind of like, oh, what's our next Canada destination? So that might be one of them. Points Traveler asked if I booked the Fairmont via Amex Fine Hotels and Resorts. Yes, however, we booked the Banff Springs Hotel here via the American Express Fine Hotels and Resorts program. That is a Amex. If you have an Amex Platinum card, then you can book these rates. When you book these rates, it includes free breakfast for 2 per room, plus $100 dining credit. So yes, we booked the Fairmont Banff Springs with that rate. At the Lake Louise, they had a 2-bedroom suite that was cheaper than if we just booked 2 rooms. And so the 2-bedroom suite was not available with the Fine Hotels and Resorts rate, but the 2-bedroom suite at the Lake Louise included breakfast for everybody staying in it and parking, and booking the 2-bedroom suite was cheaper than booking 2 individual rooms, and so that's what we booked at the Fairmont Lake Louise. Wu Taiwan asked if they've hired me on the Travel Channel yet. No, but if you know somebody there, give them a shout. Okay. Point Traveler says, is there anywhere worth staying in Banff if you're not staying at the Fairmonts? I think there's a lot of great hotels in like downtown Banff that are nice. But I don't know. We didn't stay at them. We also spent some time in Canmore, which is a town just before Banff. We stayed at the Malcolm Hotel over there. That was pretty nice. We also stayed at on the Icefields Parkway at the Columbia Icefield Adventure, which is the Glacier. We stayed at this hotel there that they call the Glacier View Lodge. So those were some of the other hotels we stayed in Banff that weren't the Fairmonts. So you'll full video reviews of those coming soon. They've got to be edited, which takes longer than recording them, but those are in the pipeline. Okay, so those are Banff hotels. Let's talk about Grand Canyon hotels. The Grand Canyon has 6, maybe 7 hotels, depending upon how you count it. They're all, except one, operated by this company called Xanterra. Xanterra originates from this company called the Fred Harvey Company. Similar to in Canada, the Canadian Pacific Railway heritage of building these hotels and moving to Fairmont. Kind of similar thing with like the National Park Service and rail in the U.S. The Fred Harvey Company operated hotels at many of the major train stations, and eventually that was rolled into this company called Xanterra. They're generally a giant monopoly for concessions at U.S. national parks, and so many of the hotels at national parks in the USA are run by Xanterra, and since they have no competition, many or most of them are mediocre at best. Prices at all the hotels in the Grand Canyon are set by the National Park Service, and so they don't fluctuate based on demand. Like, any day of the year, by the way, this is the best hotel at the Grand Canyon. This is the El Tovar Hotel. It's like the original hotel there. It's nice, but it's not great. It's not great like the Fairmonts. The cheapest room here at the El Tovar Hotel is $450 a night, which I would pay $600 a night for the Banff Springs hotel room compared to this $450 any day of the week. Easily well worth that extra price. No comparison between this room and that room. Now, if you go in summertime to the Banff Springs, you're paying $2,000. I think that's crazy talk. But that $450 rate, you know, like, it's really worth it in July when it's high season, and it's maybe not as worth it in February when it's really slow, but that's how they set all the rates. The rates for Grand Canyon hotels, the cheapest hotel is the Bright Angel Lodge. You'll get rooms there for $200 if you have your own bathroom, or even a little less if you don't have your own bathroom. And swimming pools are not really a thing. So in this area, I think that the Banff like wins single-handedly in hotels. If you like nice hotels, Banff is your place. If you are okay with motel level accommodations, then the Grand Canyon will be fine for you. Brooklyn Joe says, I just stay in Flagstaff. That's the other option if you don't mind the hour-and-a-half drive into the Grand Canyon. Flagstaff is the closest place with like real hotels. Kathy solved that problem by not staying and just doing a day trip from Vegas, which is what many people do. They just come in, look at the view, punch on out again, and that way they don't have to worry about the hotels. Brooklyn Joe asks if I saw those twin girls there. Which twin girls where? Were there twin girls here, twin girls there? I'm not sure which twin girls you mean. Oh, and Kid Blue Creations asked about the hot springs at Banff, if they dried up. There are still hot springs that are there. There is like one natural hot spring that you can go to, but I guess actually like the Canadian government decided that the hot spring water that people were bathing in for decades was full of bacteria and not very good for them and corrosive to the pipes and things like that. So there's only one place that you can go in the natural hot springs now, and they heavily chlorinate the water. So yeah, that's the the whole hot spring thing in Banff at this point. Okay. And Shauna seconds that there are tons of lovely little hotels and inns in Banff worth a visit. Yeah, going back again, we like the Fairmont Lake Louise was really cool. We love the location. We'd probably stay there again next time. Because there's so many other hotels in Banff, we might give the Fairmont Banff Springs a miss and stay someplace else. Also at that Emerald Lake that I showed you before, there was like a cute little inn that was by Emerald Lake, and there's like all these little like inns that just open in the summer around these various lakes. So I think a lot of those like smaller hotels are absolutely worth a look too. Okay. Area number 10, let's talk about camping. Camping in the Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon has 4 front country campgrounds. What's a front country campground? That's a campground that you can drive your car to and you don't need a special back country permit to like hike and camp. At the 4 campgrounds, there's 3 along the south rim, and then there's 1 along the north rim. There's 2 different rims of the Grand Canyon. It's $18 for a campsite that looks like this, meaning it's land and you put your stuff on without RV hookups, things like that. They do have 1 RV park, costs more. You can find more camping in the nearby Native American lands, but there's really not that much of these campgrounds at the Grand Canyon itself. Banff, many more campgrounds. There are 14 campgrounds in Banff with 2,400 campsites. Most of them are reservable online, though if you do want to reserve them, they open the entire year at the beginning of January, and you need to book them within a few minutes if you want to get them in summer because they all book out. Most of them are just seasonal and open in the summer. There's 1 campground in Banff Town and 1 campground in Lake Louise that's open year-round if you really want to be a glutton and camp there when it's negative 30 degrees Celsius. All right, that's I was talking to somebody the other day before we went to Banff, and I was like, hey, we're going to Banff, we're doing these things, have you been? You know, and I told him we're staying at the Fairmont. He's like, yeah, Chris, I've been, but I don't know that my stay would be like related to your stay. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. And he's like, oh, well, we went in the winter and we were doing like cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and like camping like out in the wild. I'm like, wow, that is hardcore for sure. And Alex says glamping, maybe not camping for sure. Janelle says it blows my mind that people want to camp with bears. Yeah, Art said I don't see Chris camping, not civilized enough for him. I like my breakfast buffets for sure. Okay. So let's talk about food. Okay. The Grand Canyon. This is the restaurant at the El Tovar Hotel, which is actually pretty good, particularly by national parks, by U.S. national park standards. Generally, food in U.S. national parks, so when I said the hotels of the Grand Canyon are mediocre at best, the food is also generally mediocre at best at most of the restaurants, the El Tovar being the one shining star. It's actually like a pretty nice restaurant that has pretty good food. It's been like the, hoity-toity restaurant in the Grand Canyon ever since it was built. They have a great breakfast. I had a Christmas dinner there. I enjoyed all the meals I had at the El Tovar. But, in a national park, you can't eat like all of your meals in one place, because if you are, you're not exploring the park. The Grand Canyon has less than 20 restaurants, if I count like everything that includes like sit down to counter service to cafeteria to the place that sells hot dogs. It's less than 20. And most of them are also operated by Xanterra, which means they have no competition, which tells you how good they try to be. Banff, on the other hand, has at least 100 restaurants, including Osigro wanted me to point out, including Starbucks. There's Starbucks in Banff. There's McDonald's in Banff. There's A&W in Banff. There are like restaurants and things that that aren't overpriced. There's also really nice things like the afternoon tea at the Fairmont hotels. This is the afternoon tea at the Fairmont Lake Louise Hotel. And the princess right there, she has the children's afternoon tea, which has a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the shape of a star, a strawberry sandwich with whipped cream, and for her teapot, instead of tea, it had chocolate milk in it. That all being said we did not go hungry in Banff, and actually had a lot of fairly good meals. That's not to say that all of our meals were good in Banff, but that was to say that there were actually some. Art says, is there a Tim Hortons in Banff? I feel like there is, although we didn't seek it out, so a local might actually have to help me out whether I'm being completely accurate in that or not. Brandon says it looks like a fun meal. It was a super fun meal. It was super fun. I mean, the afternoon tea, not cheap at that hotel either, but it was super fun. Whole video will be coming out on that afternoon tea as well. It was fun for us and the Curious Princess. Oh, and Brooklyn Joe says about these pancakes. I like big pancakes, and I cannot lie. Yeah, the pancakes at the Grand Canyon at the El Tovar, it came with a prickly pear syrup. So the syrup was pink. It was a very interesting syrup. Art says, Yellow Productions idea. I like my buffet breakfasts, or my breakfast buffets. All right, I like my I like my breakfast buffets, and I cannot lie. Something like that. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. So if you like food, Banff is going to be better. All right. Let's talk about getting around these two parks. And by the way, this conversation about Lake Louise, this is Lake Louise. So this is one of the most famous lakes in Banff. Just beautiful. And if you're looking at this picture and you're like, Chris, what is this picture? This picture is the camera right down at the water line. So at the bottom of this, you're looking at the lake that's all reflection, the lake super still, because 95% of it was iced over, but this section wasn't. And so the water was so still that it was a perfect reflection of the mountains and the sky at the top. No editing, no touching up. That's the photo right out of the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Truly a beautiful place. Like, Banff really felt like every picture we took could like be on a postcard, that kind of a thing. But getting around both Banff and Grand Canyon, parking can be really lousy in both places. There's just not enough parking at most of the major trailheads, so both parks operate shuttle systems. At the Grand Canyon, all of the shuttles are first come, first serve, and free. In Banff, many of them are paid, and many of them have to be reserved ahead of time. Like if you want to go to Lake Moraine Lake, one of the most famous lakes, you have to get there by a paid shuttle that you reserve a specific time to get there, which means you have to do that ahead of time, which means that they sell out. In the busy season, it is much more of a hassle to get around Banff. It was not a hassle to go in May. Plenty of parking, plenty of places to go, which is why we went in May, but we did have to put up with a lot of things being icy or not closed, which is why it wasn't necessarily always that busy. The Grand Canyon, you just put up with the fact that the parking lots get full and you just have to park further and further away, though you're not going to have to spend extra money to get on the shuttles, and you're not going to be completely out of luck with the shuttles. You'll still be able to get on one if you just wait long enough. Brandon says that is a wallpaper-worthy pick. I'll post it up on the community page in case anybody wants to use it for their wallpaper later. All right. Okay. So let's talk about activities in these two places. Number 13, and then I got 14, and that's the last one. So, of course, then we do a giveaway, as we always do. And then I'll announce the giveaway from last time. The winner of the planin.com $250 hotel rebate giveaway. All right. So, activities. Both have hiking, for sure. This is hiking in the Grand Canyon. As I mentioned earlier, the hikes at the Grand Canyon, they're all reverse hikes. So you start at the top of the mountain, you go down the mountain. Most of the hikes in the Grand Canyon I would describe as serious hikes. They're like miles and miles and miles long down into the Grand Canyon. There are not a lot of really rewarding casual hikes. There's the rim trail that you can walk around the top, but it doesn't really feel like much of a trail. It's kind of like a paved path that runs along the top. Banff, on the other hand, has a wide variety of trails for a wide level of skills, desires, lengths, ranging from the very picturesque to those down rivers to intense to up to the top of the mountains if you so choose. Banff trails can be icy and snowy for 9 months of the year. Only a couple months at the Grand Canyon. Banff does have 4 gondolas that'll take you up to the top to see the views. This is the one called Banff Gondola. This one is entirely a sightseeing gondola. There's no skiing, there's no snowboarding. This gondola was entirely built to take you from the bottom to the top so you can enjoy the view. I think that's cool. I think that's nice. There's so many national parks in the US that I often wish, like Zion, like Angel's Landing, this hike that like people like they die on this hike because it's like so hard and treacherous. And I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if they built a gondola up there? But as far as I know, I don't think any US national park has a sightseeing gondola to really take you to the top of things. Fellow explorers, if I'm wrong and you're like, Chris, there is a gondola for sightseeing only, not skiing, snowboarding, blah, 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 not winter sports, but just to take you up to the top to see the view in a US national park, let me know. Because I want to go to that one. It's a pretty rarity if they do exist in the US, not ones that I've been to. In places that we tend to have things to take you to the top, they tend to be like ski resorts or places like Palm Springs. There's Palm Springs Aerial Tramway, they'll take you to the mountaintop, but then it's more of like a private operation, not really a national park. So I appreciate that it was in the middle of the park. Banff has winter sports stuff, skiing, snowboarding, ice skating on frozen lakes. Banff, you can walk on a glacier. Both, you can do rafting expeditions down the rivers. Banff has scenic boat tours on the lakes when they're thawed out. Banff also has a movie theater and a 5-pin bowling alley. So I think there is a larger variety of things to do in Banff. And maintenance. Maybe due to the higher prices or the, I forgot to say this, animals, because we were talking about this. Getting around. In the Grand Canyon, the one cool thing in the Grand Canyon, you can ride a mule. These are mules you can take down into the Grand Canyon. Though if you do want to do the mule ride, you have to reserve it about 13 months ahead of time to get in on the mule ride. And then this is the glacier in Canada. One of the highlights of our visit was definitely this Columbia Icefield Adventure Tour where they take you on these like gigantic things onto a glacier. You only get like 20, 25 minutes out in the glacier. You can drink the glacier water, but we thought that was a lot of fun. Okay, maintenance. We found, in general, Banff felt more well-maintained than the Grand Canyon did, which is interesting for a place that's under snow and ice for 9 months a year. It seems like a harder place to maintain. That's everything from the roads to the trails to the restrooms, the call washrooms there, toilets, signs, all that stuff just generally felt better kept. I don't know if that's in relation to the almost twice as much price you pay to get there or the revenue generated from more of the commercial activities, but generally the park just had I feel like, higher level standard of niceness of man-made things. The last thing that I want to talk about is the attitude. And so this is a little bit maybe of the U.S. National Park thing versus the Canadian National Park thing, is that generally everybody that we encountered in Banff was friendly and seemed to enjoy their job. Maybe they do. Maybe they enjoy their job. Maybe they're good at faking it. I don't know, but at least they didn't seem to hate life itself. And I can't say the same for the Grand Canyon. Like, when I went to the Grand Canyon, sure, you know, the National Park Service people were friendly, but the rest of the people who front desk at the hotels, at the restaurant counters, all those things, shops, not so much. Didn't really seem to enjoy their life. Didn't really seem to enjoy the customers. Like, kind of look at me, and I feel like they're looking at me like, do I really have to help you? One of the things that I found unique talking to the people in Banff was asking them where they're from. And most of the people who work in Banff are not from the Canadian province of Alberta, the region. Most of the Canadians that I spoke to were from the province of Ontario, which is where Toronto is, the big city in Canada. Though even more than that were visitors, foreign workers on work visas from the United Kingdom, from Australia. I mentioned the guy who's been there 17 years from the Philippines, from Korea, and the work visas to Banff also typically include like really cheap housing. So we were talking to one of the people at the Fairmont Banff Springs, and she said she loves working there. She's from the UK because she gets her housing, her like apartment, for $16 per day. $16 per day. That includes Wi-Fi, that includes utilities, all those things. And Banff is a pretty expensive place to live if you're going to live outside of that. And so she can live in Banff for pretty cheap and make a living at the same time and not spend that much on hiking. Now, what's funny about this Canadian friendliness or visitor friendliness from Canada versus American friendliness is Americans are known, I feel like, from the US to be chatty. But I actually don't find that in the service industry very much. Like, I found, like, in the Grand Canyon, like, nobody really wanted to chat me up about anything. And not that I'm sitting there needing to be chatted up, but I found, like, everybody in Banff legitimately wanted to strike up a chatty conversation at the cash register, at the breakfast buffet table, wherever we were. People like, like, where are you from? What you doing today? How are you enjoying your day? Where are you going? And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And I wonder if that's a product of that Banff has so many more like foreign workers that are there for a couple years, and so they're like, oh, this is cool, this is a vacation for me, I get to like ski in this place for 2 years. So like, woo, stay in their $16 housing, stay with the friend group, and then punch on to their next thing. Art just hate life itself. He thought that was funny. Alex says Canadians are nice, Americans want you to leave them alone. Yeah, Wonton Destruction says a lot of people that work in Banff want to be there to pursue skiing or other outdoor adventures, and I guess there's not that much to do in the Grand Canyon. After a while, you can only ride the mule so often. Art says, is Banff the premier national park? It sure is. And Art says, do they take tips in Canada? Yes, they definitely take tips in Canada. I felt begged as much for tips in Canada as I did in the USA. Alex on that previous picture says spectacular. Alex has also been a supporter here of the Yellow Productions channel as a channel member for 11 months. And so thank you for your continued support, Alex. All right, so now the question of like overall, where should you go? Should you go to the Grand Canyon? Should you go to Banff? You know, like I certainly think there is something where, you know, Canadians probably tend to go to Banff and people from the USA tend to go to the US national parks because, I don't know, maybe many people don't have passports and so they can't go to those other things, or it's harder to go to these other places. But I really enjoyed Banff. Like, and I enjoyed the Grand Canyon too. Like, it was neat to see that wonder of the world, but I don't have an immediate desire to go back to the Grand Canyon. Yeah, but I would absolutely go back to Banff. So if I was gonna like pick one to be like, well, where should you go? And assuming you're going in the 4 months that are summer, you know, May, June, July, August, then I'd pick Banff. I think Banff was pretty nice. Now, if you're not just going for national park and you're like, oh, like I want to go for a big road trip because somebody said that they were like, hey, I want to go to Zion and the Grand Canyon and those sorts of things. The Grand Canyon is really great to connect with all those other places. So come into Las Vegas, go to the Grand Canyon, go to Bryce Canyon, go to Zion Canyon. I think that's a great American road trip, and I would absolutely recommend it packaged in one of those things. So you really want to connect more things to the Grand Canyon, I think, to make it worth your while, since you're driving all the way up to the middle of nowhere to get there, you might as well enjoy all of these other things that are out in the middle of nowhere too. And so Brandon says the winner is Banff National Park, according to Chris. Yes, the winner is Banff National Park, according to Chris. Susan says, I'm Canadian and I've been to the Grand Canyon and not Banff. Go figure. Go figure indeed. All right. Let's go ahead and move to Q&A.
Fellow explorers, it is now Q&A time. If you've got a question, I've got an answer.
Wasn't fast enough to drink during the during the bumper there. Alex says, as someone who does photography almost religiously, I think I'd prefer Banff for the photo opportunities. I bet you would. I saw a ton of people carrying big cameras and tripods and all those things around. The photo opportunities are absolutely amazing in Banff. Beagle999 says, where is Topher? Which one would you like to be playing Topher today? The Yellow Productions crew is all there hanging out in the back. Annie says, would the weather in early September be okay in Banff? I thought about their driving from Washington State. Annie, I think it would be okay. You have a risk of getting snow in September, but the snow generally doesn't stick in September. So with that, the trails are still pretty accessible. The lakes won't be completely frozen over, but you might not be able to do a lot of water activities because they might be starting to freeze over. But yes, I would say the general advisable month, so the high season in Banff, June, July, August, with the shoulder season being April and May. April, I think a lot of things are really still frozen. May for us was okay, but there were things that were still frozen that we couldn't do. We needed to wear ice cleats on some of the trails, which was okay. It was okay. In September and October, you will run into probably more snow actually falling, but again, not sticking, but perhaps colder than it is in the May timeframe. Shauna says it's a lifestyle for the workers. If you love the outdoors, it's a fantastic opportunity. Feed My Sheep says, what route would I take from the Grand Canyon to Yosemite? What route would I take from the Grand Canyon to Yosemite? From the Grand Canyon to Yosemite, let's see, from the Grand Canyon to Yosemite, 17 probably down to Phoenix, over to the 10, over to the 40. No, I'd take the 40. So from the Grand Canyon to Yosemite, I would go from the Grand Canyon down to Flagstaff, hang a right on the 40, and then you take the 40 up to either 395, come in the back way. That's probably how I'd go if you were going in the summer. If you were going in the winter, then you wouldn't want to take the 395 because it'd be frozen over, and then you'd want to take the 99 up. So there you go, Feed My Sheep. Alex says, was curious why it seems you haven't responded to messages on Facebook lately. I've sent you a few fun the last couple months. I tend to not look at my Facebook messages all that much, so I tend to respond to my YouTube comments all the time, but Facebook I just don't pay attention to as much, so that's why. If you really want me to see something, a YouTube comment is the best way for me to actually see it. My dad, Electric Rig, says, good times, good times. Janelle Travel says, July is brutal in Banff. You can't walk on the streets properly. So many people. It's like Times Square. Thank you for that tip, Janelle. Jay Kimmy says, did you drive the Bow Valley Parkway? I'm going in June and heard it'll be closed to car traffic. Bow Valley Parkway, Highway 1A, A1A, something like they call that. There is a section of it that's closed, but not all of it's closed. So yes, we drove some of that, the scenic highway instead of this highway. You got to get past Banff Town up to Castle Junction, and then you can drive on it to Lake Louise. So the answer is some's closed, but not's all closed. Laura says, how about the Stampede? We did not go to the Stampede in Calgary. The Calgary Stampede is one of the world's biggest rodeos, and fair and food, bucking broncos, that sort of thing. It is in July in Calgary, so we missed that by about 6 weeks. Codge Full Love says, I was in Tahoe yesterday. Surprised how much snow there still was. Snowy place to linger still. Indeed. That's why we haven't had live streams for so long. We were in Lake Tahoe a couple weeks before we went to Banff. I guess just to prepare us for the snow. And yes, there's a lot of snow in Lake Tahoe too. Okay. Sean says, what are the best places to stay in the Grand Canyon? I think the best place is the El Tovar Hotel. There you go. Next to the El Tovar Hotel, there's also the Thunderbird Lodge and the Kachina Lodge. Those are right on the rim. Those would be the 3 that I would consider staying at. Points Traveler says, would you recommend checking out Calgary or driving straight to Banff? We enjoyed spending a day in Calgary. You will see that in the vlog when it comes out. So I would recommend spending a day in Calgary before driving to Banff. Yes. Kid Blue Creations asked if you saw moose. We did not see any moose in Banff. Narrow Road says, since most tourist businesses are privately operated, Banff, the service people are likely friendly. Government service workers are seldom motivated to be friendly. See, and that's the thing, Narrow Road, is that, like, while I agree perhaps with that statement, I find at the Grand Canyon, the national park workers, which are the actual government workers, are friendly. The NPS staff, the park rangers, the people who I find are not friendly are the people who actually work for the private company, the concessionaire. But, you know, perhaps because it's a monopoly, they don't spend their time trying to hire the friendliest people. Maya asks if we went to Jasper National Park. Kind of. We went to the southern tip of Jasper National Park to do the Columbia Icefield Adventure, which is the glacier tour that is technically in Jasper National Park, which is right next to Banff. We didn't make it up to the town of Jasper for this trip. Maybe we need to next time because there's a fair amount up there that we've heard is nice. Wonton Destruction says, come for the stampede. You like pancakes? We got pancakes. I love pancakes. And Barbara asks if I've been to any Washington State National Parks. Not yet, or certainly not for any length of time other than kind of like driving through them.
Yes, it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time for the giveaway.
All right, fellow explorers, it is giveaway time. On every live stream, I always give away a Yellow Productions crew shirt. But first, I want to announce the winners from the contest from about a month ago that I did. The $250 planin.com hotel rebate giveaway. So there were 2 winners for that. The first winner right here for the lucky person who left a comment on my live stream a month ago where I said, like, hey, tell me about your favorite hotel. The winner for that one, picked by random number generator, is Yip Animation 55 right here. Yip Animation says, come back here. While I do live in Anaheim, my favorite hotel is the Disneyland Hotel. I really admire the theming of the different Disney characters, especially the signature suite and the new Villa's Tower. More so, the theming reminds me of the man behind this vision. Disney characters that inspired me to start my animation journey in the first place. It's always a joy walking inside the hotel. They now have a Disney artist and animation desk inside the Fantasia shop inside the Fantasy Tower. So, Yip Animation, congratulations. You win the $250 plan certificate. Why are there 2 of me here? To use on a future hotel stay booked on planin.com. And the second winner was somebody who booked a hotel over that month period. And that winner is Ronnie W. Congratulations, Ronnie W. Ronnie actually booked 3 different hotels in Vegas via planin.com. Ronnie, I hope you got some super good deals, and I hope the $250 planin.com rebate helps. If you haven't checked out planin.com, great website where I've homed a lot of my video reviews that you can go in to see which ones Yellow Productions recommends. You can find them on YouTube. You can find all my hotel reviews over there, and you get some really good discounts on hotels. I've gotten like 45% off Las Vegas hotels. I stayed at the Wynn Hotel, got 45% off of these like insider rates. Booking on planin.com. Link in the description below for people who didn't pick that already. All right, so there's a whole bunch of people that have guessed a bunch of answers because they thought I was doing the question. But you know what the thing is? I haven't decided the question yet. All right, so here's gonna be my question. We've been talking about pancakes. Brandon Torres says, did somebody say pancakes? Somebody said pancakes, that's right. For the pancakes that I had at the El Tovar Hotel, what was the syrup made of and what was its color? If you can tell me what the syrup was made of and what the color of that syrup was, in the same comment, then you will win this Yellow Productions crew shirt right here. Well, a new one shipped to you in whatever size you would like, direct to your home. Yes, the answers that people were guessing was Emerald Lake. You know, that seemed like a good question, so good job. Tina also guessed glaciarization, which is a good guess as well. So congratulations right here.
And now we have a winner chicken dinner.
Alex Jossie, you are the first person to put prickly pear and pink together in the same comment. You win a Yellow Productions crew shirt. You know how to contact me. Send me an email, chris@yellow-productions.com. We'll get a new one headed right off to you, Alex. Well, fellow explorers, as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'm going to see you in the next video. A whole bunch of videos coming out from Banff in the very near future. It's going to be a few weeks because they need to get edited before they come out. And should be back next week for a live stream too. All right, as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'll see you then.